It is my 1-year anniversary on Authortube. I'm really excited to be at this moment, but it is also a moment worldwide in and of itself right now. I really my heart goes out to everybody that is protesting and everybody that is working to support Black Lives Matters and support the victims of the injustices and that are working to fight against systemic racism, which is really important because police violence and brutality exists. Really, it exists in the US, it exists in the UK, it exists in Canada. I've never once been in the presence of a police officer and been comfortable, and that's the sort of world that we have grown up in. And I really hope that we can see some positive change and see this system kind of start to crumble down. And I've put in my description box below, I've put a link to ways that you can help support the protests and help support Black creators and Black businesses, places you can donate, petitions you can sign, and I highly recommend you taking a look at that. And it's my 1-year anniversary, so I thought it would be cool to do a Q&A and do some questions and answers. So I'm going to do that today. And right before I do that, I also want to say thank you so much to everybody that has followed me on this journey, everybody that has subscribed, all the wonderful friends I've made through Authortube, people I've chatted with in writing streams, etc. I'm so thankful to all the positive interactions I've had in this community and all the people that have stuck around. And I'm really happy that I've made it to this 1-year point, because joining Authortube was something I really wanted to do. It was something I was a little intimidated to do, to get on camera and put myself out there. And I'm really happy that I did. And that's my heartfelt spiel before I get into the questions. So we'll go ahead and get into those questions now. The first question is, how long have you had the idea for your debut novel in mind? So I am a little bit, maybe it's not strange, maybe this is a lot of other people do this, but a lot of my ideas just kind of smack me in the head out of nowhere. They don't necessarily have an origin. Sometimes I'll just have a theme in mind and then the actual idea will formulate later, and I don't really know what creates it, but that's kind of the way my ideas come. And so I actually didn't have the idea for Blood Like Magic for very long at all. It was, let me set the scene. It was NaNoWriMo 2017. I had started writing a book about Death Reapers. I had gotten about 10,000 words in and I really wasn't feeling it. And I had had this idea that I wanted to do a book about Black witches. And before, I think a little bit before that, I had had an idea in which I basically pictured there was a boy and he snuck into a girl's bedroom. And I knew there was some sort of tension between them, they were romantic, but there was some sort of external tension. And I knew the boy was trans and I knew the girl was Black. And that was kind of the image that had sort of stood out to me. And that, along with knowing I wanted to write a book about Black witches, eventually transformed into, okay, the girl is a witch. And then later on, I was like, it would be cool if this was in the future. And I was like, okay, this is in the future now, and the boy has something to do with something about the future. So that boy ended up becoming Luke, who is the main love interest in Blood Like Magic, and the girl ended up being Voya, who is my main character. And so that idea I didn't have for very long at all. I must have had it for a few days, and it had nibbled away at me until I decided, you know what, I'm going to switch gears. And so I stopped working on the Reaper NaNoWriMo project and I started working on the Blood Like Magic, which then I just called a Black Witches book. And so that's kind of how it came together. What would you say is your author brand? Are there issues, beliefs, etc. that go along with your present and future works? So this I can actually answer really easily. So my author brand is messy black girls in fantasy situations. That is very strongly what I write, which is funny because I am not a messy person. I'm actually a very neat person, which is maybe why I like writing about messy people that make bad choices and have a lot of conflict in their lives. And then I put them in a fantasy situation because that's fun for me. Aside from that, some themes that definitely show up in my work over and over again are family secrets and like family drama. I think because I grew up in such a large family, so me and my family, there were about 8 of us living in one house. We were a blended family. We were a blended family of different races, and then I had my extended family that weren't really extended. They were just like my mom's other parent, my grandma, who had also gotten married to someone else, and they were also part of our family. And so there were all these different hubs of our family in different spaces, and there were conflicts. And so I think that's always kind of been a sort of topic that I'm drawn to. I also find that I do often do main characters that have difficulty with choices or deciding what they want to do in the future or kind of putting that together, which is also funny because I'm really like regimented in like what I want my future to look like and the things I want to do. And so maybe that's why I like exploring characters that don't. How long did it take from start of concept to final print to publish your book? So I'm still doing edits on Blood Like Magic, which is my debut. And so that'll come out in summer 2021 sometime. And I started the book in November 2017. And so like, I'd say like, what is that, 2018, 2019. Oh my God, people are gonna be like, why did you need to count that on your fingers? It's so obvious. I'm bad at math. So like roughly, probably like roughly 4 years. I think that's also because of querying. So I had to spend that time writing the book, editing the book several times, querying, getting an agent, editing with my agent, and then submitting, and then being on submission with my editor, and then finally getting an offer. And so I think all those processes take a lot longer. I would hope that for selling my next book, it'll be a little bit shorter, but I guess we'll never know until it actually happens. So that's kind of the time period. What would you absolutely tell/give as the single most important piece of advice to other aspiring authors of color? This question at this time, I think what's really important for me to say to other authors of color that are especially pursuing traditional publishing, is to not water yourself down because that's what you think people want, and to not write a story of your representation the way you think people want it, and to write what is truly and authentically you, because that's the story you'll be most passionate about, and you never know how people are going to respond to that, and you'll feel happier knowing that you wrote the truest version of yourself than that you compromised. And so I talk about this because, like, for example, when I was querying Blood Like Magic, I had thoughts where I was like, oh, almost all the characters in this book are Black. Is someone gonna want to read something with so many Black people? It was like, this isn't, this isn't a book about current events per se, though some things do come together in it. And so I was like, oh, is anyone gonna want that? It's not really contemporary. And I was like, it's not high fantasy, so they're not getting to see like Africa. It's like set in Canada. I'm a Canadian Black person. I have a trans love interest. I kept thinking, would all of this be too diverse and like too different for a publisher? But I kept writing it anyway, and now it's going to be published. And so I think especially when you're a person of color, it's easy to feel like your stories aren't wanted, especially when statistically they're being published in significantly lower amounts. it can really make you feel like your stories are unwanted, and it can make you feel like if your story is not aligning to a stereotype of like what a Black person should be, or like what an Asian person should be, or any of like that maybe your story won't be accepted. But I think it's a lot better to write your truth and go forward with that, and not water it down to please an industry, because quite frankly, that industry needs to see different stories, and it needs to be better at accepting those different stories. And so it's not up to you to push yourself into a mold. It's up to you to show the truest version of yourself and your stories, and for that organization to open up and become more accepting of those stories, which I think is something that is happening more and more, and I hope will continue to be the trend as traditional publishing continues into infinity. So that's my advice. What's been your biggest struggle as a writer? For me as a writer, I think my biggest struggle has always been the comparison game. I do have a bad habit of constantly comparing myself to other people and trying to like measure my success based on how I've compared myself to someone else. So like, oh, this person is having this done with their book, so if I'm not having that done, does that mean my book's not as good? And I've many times had to talk myself out of that. I don't find that specifically jealousy is so much of an issue, because even though sometimes I'll be like, oh, I wish that would happen to me, I think because I've cultivated such strong friendships, I'm not gonna get upset that someone else has achieved that. I'm usually like so overwhelmed by being happy for them that helps squash down any jealousy like significantly. But I do have that problem of doing a comparison and being like, X person is so successful at this and I'll never be that successful, or I'll never be able to do that, or oh my gosh, this isn't happening for me, so then like my story isn't as important, or I'm not as important as an author. So that's been my biggest struggle. I do find that I've gotten a lot better at that, especially the more I've learned about traditional publishing, the more I've come to understand how different everybody's journey can be, and how what seems like it should be like super huge success may not necessarily be that way. And I think also because I've learned more about things like mid-list authors and modest advances, and understanding more the kind of longevity of my career beyond all the big flashy stuff. And that has really helped me a lot as a writer, especially in traditional publishing, and concentrating a lot more on wins and things that I've done, and really thinking back about all the things that I've been able to do and feeling really proud about that. Like, I'm really proud that I've been able to be on some panels with other amazing authors and writers. I'm really excited that I've been able to participate in a podcast. That was really exciting for me. So many, and like videos that I've done with other writers, I've been so proud of being able to do that, and like being able to sustain this YouTube channel. And there's so many other things that I've done that I can be proud of, and I try and focus on those to avoid that struggle of comparison. What are you most excited about for when you're published? So I feel like I'm still most excited about the cover. I haven't seen my cover yet. I have not seen any sketches or anything of the like. I do have some vague hints about what it might look like, but I haven't seen anything. And I still feel like that's the thing I'm most excited about. I know for some people it's like, I want to hold my book in my hands, but I'm so weird about physical books anyway that I actually just want to see the cover, because I feel like that will be the point where it feels the most like a fully realized book. I think seeing that cover, and honestly maybe even seeing past pages, because then you see the cover in combination with what the book will look like when it's printed. But to me, that's really, really exciting. Covers have always been such a big thing for me. Like when I was a teenager, I would just go to the bookstore and I'd find, or not even the bookstore usually, a mix between the bookstore and the library. And I would go in and I would just look for books that had like beautiful covers, and I'd be like, I'm gonna read you. And so I feel like that's the most exciting part for me. I think that's going to be really, really exciting. So I cannot wait to see my cover. What is your favorite scene you have written and why? So I'm going to talk about my favorite scene in Blood Like Magic. I do have a really favorite scene in my horror, but I feel like that's for another time. So my favorite scene in Blood Like Magic, I think, is there is a point at which my main character Voya, she gets to meet her ancestor for the first time. So each ancestor in the book, they call on their descendant to perform a task that they have to do in order to become a witch, and each ancestor specifically chooses a descendant. So my main character Voya, her ancestor Mama Jova specifically chooses her. And so there's this scene in which she is seeing, quite honestly, like a very upsetting scene because her ancestor was a slave. And so it's a scene involving that. And I think why it's my favorite, it's like my favorite scene, is because there's this moment in which my main character is like butted up against the pain of her ancestors directly, and her ancestor is really trying to communicate something to her about how that kind of applies to her life, but in a very different way. Not just like, oh, well, I'm in pain and you are probably feeling pain at some point, being a Black person even in the future, but she's very specifically trying to impart a lesson, and my main character just like doesn't get it. She does not get it at all. She has no idea what's happening. She's like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. She's so preoccupied by watching a pain of her ancestor that she herself has never had to experience, being someone in the future in that way. And so I think what I just like about it, I just like that her ancestor is trying so hard to teach her something. And because it's the very beginning of the book and my main character still has to learn all sorts of lessons, she just doesn't get it. She has no idea what she's being taught. She has no idea what's going on. She's just upset, which I think is very legitimate. She's upset. She's like low-key traumatized. And she's just like, I don't know what you want me to do here. And it kind of ends in that place with the ancestor kind of realizing they have so much farther to go with them. And I think it's not really, I don't know if it's a scene, well, I think it'll probably stand out, but I don't know if it's a scene that'll like stand out hugely to readers. I guess I won't know until people are actually reading it. But to me, it's just like that pivotal point of like, what can you learn from the people that have come before you? And we're living in a time in which we would never know. We can never know like what sort of stuff like people who came before us might want to share with us. And I just find it kind of funny that she has that opportunity and she is so messy she can't even like learn anything. Which, yeah, so it's like a pretty devastating scene, but like why I like it is kind of funny. So that's my thoughts about my favorite scene in Blood Like Magic. And it took me forever to come up with that answer because I couldn't think of which scene I specifically loved. There is another scene that I love, but it's like very spoilery, so I won't mention it. But I guess you'll see when the time comes. Lindsay Puckett says, what is your favorite thing about me? Well, Lindsay, she said, just kidding. So the question is actually, what is one wild publishing dream that you have right now? I will also link Lindsay Puckett. She's another Authortuber. You should check her out also. And I'm also actually gonna like Laura at Laura Writes also sent me a question, but I couldn't answer it, so then I'll also link her below. She wanted me to share the scoop about my boyfriend, but he's shy about public stuff, so I vetoed that. Sorry. But the actual question from Lindsay is, oh yeah, what is one wild publishing dream that you have? I feel like my wildest publishing dream is definitely like having a TV show or a movie adaptation of the book. I feel like that's always going to be the wildest one. I wouldn't dream of a theme park because I don't know what you would do because it's set so specifically in Toronto. Like, And I don't know what the rides would look like. I feel like they'd be bad. Like it would be like one ride where like Keisha pokes you with her nails for like 20 minutes. What would it even be? So definitely not that. I wouldn't even think of that because of the way all my books are. But definitely a TV show or movie would be amazing. TV show more, I would rather. I think I would rather a TV show than a movie, she says, as if she has the leniency to pick. But I think a TV show would be really cool. It like gives you so much time to like get to know the characters more. And then I think it'd be awesome if they like film in Toronto and like I could go to locations and somehow we could find a role for Ellen Page. I don't know. There are no character roles for her, but maybe she would walk by. We would find a way to incorporate her. And I think that would be super, super cool. That's definitely like a super pie in the sky one. I think New York Times bestseller would be cool, but I think I like know too much about the bestsellers list now that I'm like it'd still be super, super cool if it happened, but I think my more like wild dream is definitely to have a TV show adaptation. Did your writing routine change now that you're at home full time? If so, what is new? So if you didn't know, when COVID started, I lost my job. I used to do social media at a travel agency, and I've since then not acquired a new job. You can see more in this video over here. And so I'm at home. So I'm basically writing full time, and my writing schedule has changed completely. So what I used to do back in the day when I had a job that I physically went into, and even when I didn't physically go into, because I used to do this on days when I worked from home as well, but I would wake up at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and I would do all my writing in like the 1 or 2 hours in the morning before I went to work or before I started work. And that was what I did just like all the time. So like 7 days a week until I finished a project, essentially. And now it's all over the place. So now I wake up at like roughly 9, I look at my phone and I check YouTube to see if anybody's doing a writing stream that day, or writing sprint that day. If somebody's doing a writing sprint, I won't write until the sprint. If nobody's doing it, then I have to motivate myself, which is very painful for me. And then I spend like the morning wasting time. Sometimes I'll like wash dishes, or I'll like film a video, or I'll do something else with my time to procrastinate writing. And then eventually I will force myself to sit down. So either I'll like set 10-minute timers and like write on for 10 minutes, write and like take a break for 10 minutes, or I'll find an old writing stream to watch. And that's pretty much how I get my work done. This one says, tell us about life post book deal. That I picked this one out because I think it's kind of an interesting experience, because I feel like everybody has such different experiences, given their book deals, etc. For me, it was really good in a lot of ways. For one, I was achieving my childhood dream of becoming an author. My advance helped me pay off my student loan, which was pretty much my only source of debt. And so I became debt-free for like the first time since I was 18 years old. So like almost 10 years later. So that was a big deal for me. And so those were really like big things that immediately resulted from getting a book deal. But for me, even more than that, emotionally, I feel like I've calmed down a lot, because I had spent so many years really like working super hard to get an agent and writing books and like not having them work out and like editing them and like trying again and then coming up with different ideas and writing new books and that sort of thing. I feel like that took more of an emotional toll on me than I thought it did. I didn't realize how kind of heavy it was to be querying and like dealing with that back and forth rejection, and then even after querying, doing that with submission as well, dealing with the back and forth rejection. I think getting the book deal made me feel like, oh, I can do this. I can actually do this. And so I don't feel as emotionally distraught. I feel like for the most part, I feel like real chill since. And then even though there are like some stressors of like, oh, I have to write the second book, or like I've got to write another book if we want to sell another book. And like, will I sell another book, and those sorts of stressors. But for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like it's ever been as much as it was before the book deal, possibly because I constantly have my book to look forward to. So even when I'm like, oh, I'm stressed about my sequel, I'm like, I can't wait until I get to see my cover. Or, oh my gosh, I've got to write another book if we want to sell another book next year. It's like, oh man, I can't wait until I can like hold my book and I can sign it and like show people and other people can read it. There's this constant excitement of the book coming out to kind of temper any stress about other stuff. So I think that's kind of been the big thing about life post-book deal. And I'm learning stuff all the time, which is really cool as well. Have you or would you consider other mediums of writing, poetry, screenwriting, short fiction, etc.? So this is like a story time. I have previously wrote poetry. I previously wrote a play. I have also previously wrote several short stories. And I don't know that I want to do any of those again. Though I did the other day have a really good idea for a short story, but then I just like never carried on with it, though I've been keeping it in my head. But essentially, poetry, I think, is not for me. It's not really my jazz. The play in high school, I wrote a play because at our school they had like a festival in which people would basically submit plays, and so you could write your own. So I thought I would write one. I mostly wrote it because a boy that I liked was really involved in plays, and I thought if I wrote the play and was the playwright that we could get closer together. And so I was not writing the play for the right reasons, and the play was very bad, and they didn't end up doing it. And then they like offshot me to like some other students that hadn't got into the play that were like just interested in doing whatever, and then they put them in that. And like I just remember viscerally, like they were practicing one scene and the girl had to read a line and it had a swear in it, and she was afraid to say the swear. And I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't think I'm cut out to be a playwright or to deal with any of this. And so I don't think I would do that. And screenwriting, I don't super want to. Whenever I think of screenwriting, and I have interest in kind of learning, but I also feel like I always would rather just write the book and do that. Even for horror, like I super love horror movies, but I would rather write a horror book and try and get it adapted and have someone else write the screenplay than have me write it. But short fiction, I do always like. I wrote a lot of short fiction, mostly, almost entirely literary short fiction. And I spent a lot of time submitting them to literary magazines to try and get them in. And I never got into a magazine. And I think it's always just like scarred me and made me feel not great. So then I haven't like written short fiction in a while, also because I've been so concentrated on getting full novel length works out there that I haven't really taken the time for short fiction. But like I said, I did have a short story idea that I thought would be kind of cool. And I don't know, maybe I'll write it one day. I should probably more coherently write down the idea before I forget, but yeah. I'm going to do these two last ones together because I think they're very good finishing questions. These both came from Brittany Eclectic. I'm going to link her channel down below. She's an awesome booktuber. She also does all sorts of other stuff, planner things. She like sells planner things in her Etsy store as well. So I'm going to link her down below. Definitely check her out. So the first question is, what's something you learned about yourself since joining Authortube? And I think what I learned about myself is that I'm not like as awkward as I thought I was, question mark. I've always kind of had a bit of difficulty in social situations. Growing up, I didn't often have a lot of friends. As an adult, it's been really difficult for me to make friends in things like work or like just kind of generally. That's always been something hard for me. In high school, I went like a full month before I could finally like muster up the courage to properly introduce myself to someone and make friends. That's kind of always been something I've struggled with, and I've always been a lot better at that online, about like making connections with people online. And that was something I really wanted to do, and that was something that made the writing community so nice for me, was how I could make those interactions online. And so I guess since joining, I've learned that I can do a lot more than I thought I could. I can really push to do the things I want to do. Like, I had gone to Booknet Fest. I had gone there by myself. There was a time where traveling alone was really stressful for me, because I felt like I needed to have someone. But right before that, right before I had gone to London by myself, I think. Or maybe right after. I don't know. Anyway, I had gone to Booknet Fest, and even though if you watch my Booknet Fest vlog, you'll know that I kind of had a rough time at some point there. I had a bit of like, I was upset with myself over not being able to socially interact the way I wanted to, because I was getting caught in my own sort of negative thought loops. And so, it made it really difficult for me, and I like cried. But still, since then, when more opportunities have come up to do things like panels or things like that, I've really gone for them and pushed myself and tried. I moderated a panel in real life at Heart House in like March. Oh my gosh, so long ago. And that was like, I had never moderated before, but I really went for it. And so I think since joining Authortube, I've really become aware of all the things I can do and how far I can go. And the last question, where do you see your channel going in year 2? This is really exciting. I think there are so many different things that I want to do going forward in my channel. For one, I want to find a way for me to do something live on YouTube finally. A few people have volunteered to go live with me, and I've been participating in other people's live events, and so that's something I want to get more comfortable with, especially because when I do my book launch in 2021, from wherever it may be, I would like to also stream that live so that everybody around the world on my YouTube channel can also like celebrate that with me. So I'd like to get more comfortable with doing lives and incorporating that more into my channel. And I'd also like to like plan a collab. I'm brainstorming right now. I'm trying to think of some sort of collab that I would want to do, but I'd like to get a lot more into that and like planning a fun collaboration to do in the Authortube community. I also just kind of want to find ways to just continue to put out like fresh content. Like, I want to think of like fun, random, out there videos that are like helpful to people, but also like entertaining for me that I can put out into the world. So 100% on this video, if you have any things that you want to see me do videos for, please comment and share those. I am open to ideas and checking those out 100%. But that's kind of what I have in store for year 2. I haven't planned a lot. Maybe I should, but that's something I want to work on, and I'm really hopeful about going into year 2 as well. And that's it for this Q&A. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to everybody that subscribed to this channel, everybody that has supported me on YouTube for this year. I've super appreciated it. It was always like my goal to be able to keep on with this for a year, and I was able to like post consistently and like be consistently on here and like make some real connections and friendships in the community, which I remember when I did my Authortube newbie tag was something that I really, really wanted to do and something that I wasn't sure I would. And I was able to do that. And so I'm really proud of that. And I'm really grateful to all of the friends that I've made and like people I've met. And so yeah, that's kind of my whole end of this 1 year anniversary YouTube Authortube video. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Anyone I mentioned, I'll have them linked below. Also the videos I mentioned will have their little dingies over here. If you haven't subscribed to me already, please subscribe below. I talk all about my journey through traditional publishing and offering advice on anything I've learned. And also I do things like interviews with other writers to talk all about writing and publishing. And so if you want to see more of that, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.